What is faith? It is belief in the absence of evidence. Now, I don't propose to tell anybody what to believe, but for me, believing when there's no compelling evidence is a mistake. The idea is to withhold belief until there is compelling evidence.
What is your personal religion, or is there any type of God to you? Like, is there a purpose, given that we're just sitting on this speck in the middle of this sea of stars? Humans have created a mythological framework that has always involved often involves some kind of higher spiritual powers. And as
Every human culture has done.
As that goes away, as we know more and more and it seems harder and harder to prove that anything might exist like that, where does that leave us?
On our own, which to my mind is much more responsible than hoping that someone will save us from ourselves so we don't have to make our best efforts to do it ourselves. And if we're wrong, and there is someone who steps in and saves us, okay, that's all right. I'm for that, but we, hedged our bets. It's Pascal's bargain run backwards. I'll say another word. The word God covers an enormous range of different ideas, and you recognize that in the way you phrase the question. Running from an outsized, light-skinned male with a long white beard sitting in a throne in the sky and tallying the fall of every sparrow, for which there is no evidence. To my mind, if anybody has some, I sure would like to see it. To the kind of God that Einstein or Spinoza talked about, which is very close to the sum total of the laws of the universe. Now, it'd be crazy to deny that there are laws in the universe, and if that's what you want to call God, then of course God exists. And there are all sorts of other nuances. There is, for example, the deist God that many of the founding fathers of this country believed in, although it is a secret whose name may not be spoken in some circles, a roi fainéant, a do-nothing king, the God who creates the universe and then retires, and to whom praying to is sort of pointless. He's not here. He went somewhere else. He had other things to do. Now that's also a God. So when you say, do you believe in God? If I say yes or if I say no, you have learned absolutely nothing.
I guess I'm asking you to define yours if you have one.
But why would we use a word so ambiguous that means so many different things?
It gives you freedom to define it.
It gives you freedom to seem to agree with someone else with whom you do not agree. It covers over differences. It makes for social lubrication. But it is not an aid to truth, in my view. And therefore I think we need much sharper language.
Carl Sagan was right that myths about gods were humanity's first attempt to explain the unknown. The Egyptians thought the sun was the god Ra. The Greeks thought thunder was Zeus. But science replaced those stories. Now we know the sun is nuclear fusion and thunder is electricity. The more we learn, the less we need supernatural explanations. Christianity shows the same pattern. In the Bible, diseases like epilepsy were called demonic possession, but neuroscience proves its abnormal brain activity. In the Middle Ages, priests said the Black Death was God's punishment, while today we know it was bacteria spread by fleas. Every time, religion was wrong and science corrected it. Sagan also warned that hoping for God to save us makes people avoid responsibility. Look at climate change. Some Christian leaders in the US dismiss it by saying God controls the earth. But NASA data shows global temperatures are up about 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880 because of human activity. If we wait for divine help, nothing changes. Even the word God itself is a problem. The Bible calls God I am in Exodus, while Einstein used the word to mean the laws of physics. If one word can mean an invisible being in the sky or just equations, it hides truth instead of revealing it.
I think the essence of the scientific method is the willingness to admit you're wrong, the willingness to abandon ideas that don't work, and the essence of religion is not to change anything. That supposed truths are handed down by some revered figure, and then no one is supposed to make any progress beyond that because all the truth is thought to be in hand. My sense is that the scientific way of thinking, questioning, some delicate mix of creative encouragement of new ideas and the most rigorous and skeptical scrutiny of new and old ideas, I think that is the path to the future, not just for science, but for all human institutions. We have to be willing to challenge because we are in desperate need of change.
What is faith? It is belief in the absence of evidence. Now, I don't propose to tell anybody what to believe, but for me, believing when there's no compelling evidence is a mistake. The idea is to withhold belief until there is compelling evidence. And if the universe does not comply with our predispositions, okay, then we have the wrenching obligation to accommodate to the way the universe really is.
So you step forward to say, I deny all religion because I can't see it proved scientifically?
No. You see,
the value of religious experience and the value of reaching for higher experiences.
Let me say, religion deals with history, with poetry, with great literature, with ethics, with morals, including the morality of treating compassionately the least fortunate among us. All of these are things that I endorse wholeheartedly. Where religion gets into trouble is in those cases that it pretends to know something about science. The science in the Bible, for example, was acquired by the Jews from the Babylonians during the Babylonian captivity of 600 BC. That was the best science on the planet then. But we've learned something since then. Roman Catholicism, Reformed Judaism, most of the mainstream Protestant denominations have no difficulty with the idea that humans have evolved from other creatures, that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, with the Big Bang. They don't have any trouble with that. The trouble comes with people who are biblical literalists, who believe that the Bible is dictated by the creator of the universe to an unerring stenographer.
And so therefore they...
And has no metaphor or allegory.
And from there they make their political and economic choices, and social choices.
And scientific.
And scientific choices. And scientific. And that's part of your problem with that idea.
Exactly.
It is that because for the wrong reasons we make the wrong choices about science.
That's right. So who is more humble? The scientist who looks at the universe with an open mind and accepts whatever the universe has to teach us, or somebody who says everything in this book must be considered the literal truth and never mind the fallibility of all the human beings involved in the writing of this book?
The Bible's science came from Babylonian cosmology around 600 BC, where people thought the earth was flat under a dome sky. That may have been the best knowledge at the time, but today we know the Earth is 4.6 billion years old and orbits the Sun in a vast galaxy. The danger is biblical literalism. Young Earth creationists still insist the world is only 6,000 years old, despite overwhelming evidence from geology, radiometric dating, and fossils that show life has evolved over billions of years. For example, carbon dating and uranium lead dating consistently prove the Earth's rocks are millions to billions of years old. Evolution is also undeniable. DNA evidence shows humans share over 98% of our genome with chimpanzees. When literalists reject this, it doesn't just stay in church pews, it spills into politics and education. In the US, battles over teaching evolution in schools continue because some insist on Genesis over science. That's exactly what Sagan warned about. When we base decisions on mythology instead of evidence, we get bad science, bad policy, and bad outcomes. And his final question cuts deep. Who's more humble? The scientist who follows evidence wherever it leads, or the believer who insists one ancient book contains every truth about the universe? If you care about reality, the answer is obvious.
There are still those in science who say the exquisite nature of the universe, the exquisite laws of the universe, are evidence of a designer, of a creator. Does that view make sense to you?
It's very tempting. I mean, we want to be thought of as children being cared for by an omnipotent, omniscient, and benevolent creator. I mean, think of all the uncertainties and turmoil and terrors of our life, which would be made less terrifying if this were true. But here, if anywhere, is a case where we must not believe because we want it to be true. Now, if you take a look at Darwin, you see a case where it was so tempting to say, I find a watch. It requires a watchmaker. Watches do not spontaneously self-assemble. And now I find an acorn, or a squid, or a bacterium. It is much more intricately and exquisitely put together than a watch. Here too there must have been a creator. It's very natural. But what Darwin pointed out is that there's a perfectly reasonable process, which is inevitable, which will create enormous, exquisite order out of chaos given enough time. If we thought the universe was only 6,000 years old, there is not enough time and evolution is nonsense. But if, as in fact is now definitively true, the solar system and the Earth are 4.5 billion years old, then there's plenty of time for evolution, and our sense that order means creator is wrong. Finally, you can say, look, you can go back as far as you want, but somehow the stuff of the universe had to come from somewhere, and isn't that what God did? But that's only true if the universe was created. If the universe was always here, if the universe was infinitely old, then there's nothing for a creator to do. Most of us would be surprised to hear that the universe is going to end one day. We expect the universe to go on forever, into the future. Why do we have the idea that it doesn't go on forever into the past? I'm not saying I know the answer to this. This is one of the deepest questions. We do not know the answer. We simply have to keep an open mind. All of us, philosophers, scientists, religious people, no one, in fact, knows.
The general picture, however, of a Big Bang followed by an expanding universe is correct. What happened before that? Was the universe devoid of all matter, and then the matter suddenly, somehow created? How did that happen? In many cultures, the customary answer is that God created the universe out of nothing. But if we wish to pursue this question courageously, we must, of course, ask the next question. Where did God come from? If we decide that this is an unanswerable question, why not save a step and conclude that the origin of the universe is an unanswerable question? Or, if we say that God always existed, why not save a step and conclude that the universe always existed, that there's no need for a creation, it was always here? These are not easy questions. Cosmology brings us face to face with the deepest mysteries, with questions that were once treated only in religion and myth.
Sagan addresses one of the most common arguments for God. That complexity proves a designer. William Paley's watchmaker analogy claimed that if you find a watch, it must have a maker. But Darwin destroyed that idea. Evolution shows that life can emerge from simple beginnings through natural selection. The fossil record, DNA, and observed mutations all confirm this process. We've even seen it happen in real time. For example, bacteria evolving antibiotic resistance within decades. No divine hand required. Then there's the claim that the universe itself must have a creator. But if you say God created everything, the obvious question is, who created God? Religious tradition avoids this by declaring God eternal. But modern cosmology lets us ask, why not apply the same reasoning to the universe itself? The Big Bang explains how the universe expanded 13.8 billion years ago, but what happened before is still unknown. The honest answer is, we don't know yet. That's not weakness, that's intellectual honesty. History shows that whenever gaps in knowledge are filled, thunder, disease, the motion of the planets, it's always science that brings answers, not scripture. Sagan's point is simple. If you want truth, you don't stop with "God did it." You keep asking questions. So let me ask you, if science has explained so much of what religion once claimed, why cling to myths instead of evidence? If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to leave a comment with your thoughts, hit the like button, and subscribe for more deep dives into science, philosophy, and the big questions that shape our lives.